Right, let's try and get the latest now from this, and we speak to our reporter who is at the site, Sipha Kema. Good evening to you, Sipha. And the minister making a lot of speeches today, and I think in particular to do with the investigations that are going to ensue from here on. Talk to us about that.
Well, that is true, Xoli. As he said, that they have already begun with the preliminary investigation looking into the matter. Now, his department has quite a critical role in all this, yes, alongside South African Police Services. Of course, that is going to be the first investigation SAPS has, because this is a crime scene, as we heard from the minister himself. So SAPS has the first preference over this, and then the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure. Now, there were some key moments or key takeaways from the media briefing, and I think one of the most important ones was the gap between a regulation between the private and the public sector. We're going to be talking about that later. I do have a guest joining me from the council who's part of the regulator in the construction and building industry. But just to touch on some of the issues that were mentioned here by the minister, Xoli, I think the first part was there's been questions on whether or not the police, Department of Labor can get a hold of, the developers or the contractors. So we actually asked the minister who exactly the Department of Public Works is able to get access to or contact with, and who is currently under investigation. And these are the people or role players in the construction site that currently are under investigation and the department has been able to get a hold of.
This matter is being treated as a third-party investigation in line with our mandate of public interest and safety. The investigator's mandate includes a comprehensive examination of any facts or factors of the engineering professionals associated with the development and implementation of the design of this project in accordance with EXA Section 14's responsibilities in its act. People contacted during the investigation include the developer, the architect, the quantity surveyor, the contractor, the municipality, Chief Building Control Officer, the Chief Inspector from the Department of Employment and Labor. We can confirm that EXA has previously received 2 complaints against one of the registered persons on this project.
And I think the most important part, Xoli, is to talk about that gap, because we have heard that the company was not registered with the CIBD, and I think that is something very important. But the minister mentioned something, saying that there is a huge gap between the public sector and the private sector in terms of regulation. I think let's bring in the council now from the South African Construction Management Agencies, who is a regulator in this industry. Now, Mr. Lufuno, let's first talk about the issue, the big gap that we heard now from the minister. It seems as though private companies actually get away with a lot.
Yeah, so there's a gap of compliance with the regulation. The laws of the country are supposed to be applicable to both private and public sector. In this case, it was not a requirement that this contractor should have been registered with CIDB, but in the law, it's supposed to be applicable to both private and public. So that's the gap that is identified here.
And now, what are the consequences for companies such as the developer that was mentioned, I know Neotrend? What are the consequences, seeing as the amendment bill is still yet to be, instated?
So there are 2 things. One is that in case where lives are lost, consequences of the law are invoked immediately. But the investigations inform what were the root causes. In terms of the contractor in question to be registered with CIDB, in this case, the law is not enforcing that they should have been, because they were developing a private project. But like I said earlier on, the laws of the country are not supposed to be choosing between private and public sector, but compliance must be for both.
And I'm guessing this is where this bill, the amendment bill, is coming in, because since it seems as though the gap is allowing for issues such as the one that we're currently seeing here in George.
Precisely. The Act needs to now get amended to be complying, to be enforceable to both private and public. Because currently, as it is being revised, the status quo is that a private sector fellow may not feel enforced to comply with this law.
So just to clarify, and for the viewers at home, so there's an understanding regarding to accountability now regarding this company, meaning they were not, the law currently, the bill does not enforce them to be registered with the CIBD, meaning there are no consequences really.
No,
in terms of registration.
So it doesn't mean that there are no consequences. Lives are lost, and consequences will definitely be there if the findings say they were wrong. But in terms of what they were supposed to comply with, in the case you are speaking about CIDB, they are not forced to comply because of the private development. That is the gap of the law that we are talking about, that this law must now be applicable to private and public sector because they both hold the lives of people.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mr. Lufuno Ratsuki. That's Mr. Lufuno Ratsuki joining us, of course, part of the regulation of the industry, the construction and building industry, of course, telling us about that gap that the minister was talking about, which seems it all goes back to enforcing compliance, legally as well. I mean, this company, there were questions on whether or not they were registered, but it seems as though even though they were not registered, it was not mandatory for them as a private entity because they were building, for a private company instead of the public sector.
Sipha Kema live for us in George. Thank you very much for the time being.